Okay, so as you know, the latest Department of Housing homeless report is out. Figures for June show yet another significant rise, another historic high. 12,600 adults and children, over 3,800 children. It's important to mention that we've seen increases across all categories of homelessness, so not just families and children, but single people, and also for the first time in some months an increase in pensioner homelessness. It is very clear that this government's plan isn't working. They've been in government for 3 years under the current incarnation, 7 years together through confidence and supply, Fine Gael 12 years, and we have never had homeless figures like these, and they are going to continue. So my view at this point is very, very clear. This government has run out of road on homelessness. They need to go. Their Minister for Housing needs to go, and their housing plan needs to go. And until we get a government that is serious about tackling the underlying causes of this housing and homelessness crisis, things are going to get worse.
What do you think in particular around family homelessness? I think it's a 4-year high for that, particularly long stays for a number of families who've been there for a year, 2 years in some cases as well. I mean, are you concerned about the ongoing impact for these people, and what do you think are the reasons why that element of homelessness is being so exacerbated at this point in time?
Yeah, so the high point in child and family homelessness was the autumn of 2019, kind of September, October, November of that period. And what changed that was Eoin Murphy's COVID ban on evictions, because that led to a dramatic reduction in the number of families, in particular with children in emergency accommodation. When Darragh O'Brien ended the COVID ban on evictions, so that would have been in April 2021, we saw a persistent increase in the number of families and children. We still haven't returned to that September-October 2019 high. We are perilously close to it. There is a higher number of families in emergency accommodation now than ever before, but the number of children is still a little bit shy of the 29 high point. And there are two causes of it. The first is, in the last 3 years, the number of family exits from emergency accommodation has collapsed. It has flown down to a trickle, in part because before that the majority of exits were into the private rental sector with homeless HAP. That sector is contracting, so there's less and less places for people to go. And also the number of families with children presenting has now returned to its 2018-2019 figures. My big concern is I'm still dealing with an awful lot of families who are overholding. Some of them are trying to find alternative accommodation. Some of them are trying to convince their landlords to do tenant in situ. Some of the landlords are engaging in the tenant in situ process, but it's still very, very slow. And at some point I think we are going to see a further increase in family presentations. And all the while, Darragh O'Brien still hasn't released his social or affordable housing delivery figures for the Q1 or Q2 of this year. We know he's 30% behind his capital spending projections according to the Department of Finance as of July. That leads me to suspect that certainly in the first half of this year, once again, he's missing his social and affordable housing targets. So if there's no private rental for people to exit to, if we're not ramping up social housing delivery, and if the number of family presentations is increasing, that means the homeless figures are going to increase in the time ahead, and that's very worrying.
When you couple it with the information from the census about how reliant now people are on the rental sector, including older people, a record number of people who are over the age of 65 who are dependent on the rental sector, you couple it with these information and the increasing number of people in emergency accommodation, this seems like it's going to be a very long-term problem to try and unwind. I mean, how long is it going to take to try and put this right? Because it doesn't seem like this isn't something that's going to take a matter of months to fix, is it?
Well, the first thing is you need to remember that is a consequence of deliberate government policy. So for 3 decades, but particularly over the last 12 years, government policy has been to subsidise an ever-increasing number of people living in the private rental sector through HAP, RAS and rent supplement, while at the same time not providing an adequate volume of social or affordable homes. Thresholding alone, only a couple of months ago, you remember, published a report on the experience of older people in the private rental sector, over 55s in particular, over 65s. And what they were saying is for the vast majority of those people, that sector is too volatile, too insecure and too expensive. To answer your question, I think if you had a change of government, a government that was willing not only to increase investment to deliver those much needed 20,000 social affordable homes every year, but cut away the red tape that's holding back our local authorities and approved housing bodies, you could start to make progress pretty speedily. I mean, for example, there's 181 people over the age of 65 in emergency accommodation. You could resolve that in a matter of months. Nobody in receipt of a pension should be homeless, full stop. And if government decided to do that, and as I've said many times before, put a call out for a framework agreement for high-grade 3D volumetric modular housing development, they could end pensioner homelessness in a matter of months. Obviously, we have 1,700 families, so it would take longer, and we have almost 6,000 singles. But if government wanted to dramatically reduce the number of people in emergency accommodation year on year, they could do it. How do we know? They did it in Finland. Finland is no richer than we are. They're not any smarter than we are. Their government took a decision, implemented that decision, and that's why they have virtually eradicated long-term homelessness.
While we're at record levels of homelessness, I mean, housing charities that I spoke to today will say that, you know, it takes time, and the government is on the right track. They will acknowledge that. So do you not think that maybe calling for them to go is just going to destabilise this? You're going to start all over again?
I don't know how anybody truly and honestly can say the government is on the right track. The government expects that 30,000 new homes will be delivered this year. The same government is now accepting what we've said for years, that we probably need about 50,000 new homes this year. These people have been in power, as I said, 12 years for Fine Gael, 7 years for Fianna Fáil. How much more time do they need? And during all of that time, not only homelessness is increasing, rents are increasing. The census figures yesterday, very importantly, average rents, not new rents, average rents up 37% in the period of the last confidence supply government and this. House prices are continuing to rise, and we have a government that's missing their social affordable housing targets. So when I listened to Michéal Martin today saying that they had turned a corner and things were moving in the right direction, I don't know what planet he's living on. Because if you go and talk to the single people or the families with children in emergency accommodation, or overholding with notices to quit, or paying €2,000 a month for rent in Dublin, or desperately trying to buy a home and not able to, or waiting 10 to 14 years on a council list for an allocation, they don't think this government is doing things right. They don't think things are moving in the right direction. So I have to say, the longer Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael remain in power, the worse this housing crisis is going to get. And I think what we need is a quick general election. Obviously, we then have to wait to see the mandates that the public give. But we are firmly of the view it is not until you have a government led by Sinn Féin with a radically different housing policy are you going to see this mess created by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael turned around.
How serious are you about this? We're in recess, and so are you going to put a motion forward in September, or what's going to happen?
No, first of all, you can't, because there's already been a motion of confidence in the minister. But I've been saying this for several years. I am deadly serious about this. Come to my constituency clinic, Alva, any Monday or any Friday. Come and sit with me. Listen to the stories of families with good jobs, families who had been living in the same rental accommodation for 10 or 15 years. Those people cannot wait in the hope that a coalition of parties who essentially for 7 years have been driving record levels of house prices, rents and homelessness should be given more time, and I agree with them. So how serious I am? Deadly serious. And if the government called an election tomorrow, we wouldn't be found wanting.